Hi everyone. You've heard me say several times in this class that it is a math class and not a methods class. In the class, we do mathematics, we work problems. We do talk about some tools and strategies for teaching mathematics, but the focus is on doing mathematics. In this video, however, I'm going to talk about a tool that you will use. So this is a methods video. In our class, we have already examined base 10 blocks. And base 10 blocks, many of you found to be a very useful tool for representing numbers and for actually you doing operations with numbers, both in base 10 and in other bases. So if we have a number, 326, we can write that in expanded form as, say, 3 100s plus 2 10s plus 6 1s. We can represent that with base 10 blocks. The number that I have here is 1,000, 2 hundreds, 3 10s, and 2 1s, 1,232. Base 10 blocks are actually useful not just for representing whole numbers, as we've done so far, but also representing fractions. And to do so, to apply base 10 blocks to fractions, all it takes is a change in perspective. So one of our fundamental concepts of fractions is the idea of the whole. What represents the whole? To change our perspective and actually use base 10 blocks with fractions, you have to consider the thousands block is no longer 1,000, but represents a whole, or 1. Remember that there are 10 flats in a cube, so that says that each of these flats represents 1/10 of the whole, or a tenth. There are 100 longs, or there's 10 longs. There's 10 longs in a, or 10 longs in a flat, 10 flats in a cube, or a 1,000. So each long represents 1/100th of the cube. And lastly, each of these little units, there are 10 units in a long, 10 longs in a flat, 10 flats in a cube. So each little unit is 1/1000th of the whole. So the cube represents the ones, the flat represents the tenths, the long represents the hundredths, and the unit represents the thousandths. So with that in mind, what number is this? If the 1,000 rather represents the 1, then what I have is I've got 2 1s, and then I have my decimal point. I've got 7 tenths, 2 hundredths, 8 thousandths. So this representation of the decimal using this as a representation of the decimal is the number 2.728. Now we can also go back in the other direction. So if I give you a fraction, 1,525 over 1,000, what number, how would I represent that with base 10 blocks? Well, first we have to write it as a decimal. Now, the quick and easy way to write it as a decimal is obviously to just use a calculator, divide 1,525 divided by 1,000. But as you know, I don't want, and you don't want your students to become calculator dependent. So let's write this in expanded form and simplify. 1,525 is 1,000 over 1,000, plus 500 over 1,000, plus 20 over 1,000, plus 5 over 1,000. Now, we can actually simplify that. So 1,000 over 1,000 is 1. 500 over 1,000 is 5/10. 20 over 1,000 is 2 over 100. And 5 over 1,000 is just 5 over 1,000. You can't simplify it any more than that. So as a decimal, 1,525 over 1,000 equals 1 whole and 5/10, 2 hundredths, and 5 thousandths, or 1.525. Now, so we've taken this fraction and we've represented it as a decimal, and now we're ready to represent that using base 10 blocks. The number, recall, was 1.525. If the 1,000 represents the ones, that is 1, 1, 5/10, 2 hundredths, and 5 thousandths. So the base 10 representation of 1.525 with base 10 blocks is given in this figure here.